What would you do if your whole life was controlled by someone else? If your every move was dictated by hidden plans and dark secrets? In today's video, we're going to explore one of the most fascinating psychological thrillers of all time, The Handmaiden, a movie that will take you on a roller coaster of emotions, betrayal, and shocking twists. But don't worry, we'll break it down in a way that's easy to follow, even for younger audiences. This 2016 South Korean film, directed by Park Chan-wook, is not your typical thriller. It's packed with layers of mystery, suspense, and incredible storytelling that will keep you hooked from beginning to end. The movie takes place during the Japanese occupation of Korea in the early 20th century, setting the stage for a world of political tension and personal secrets. Our story begins with Suki, a young woman who is hired as a maid for a wealthy Japanese heiress, Lady Hideko. But there's a twist. Suki isn't there just to serve her. She's been hired as part of a secret plot to con Hideko out of her fortune. Suki is working for a man named Count Fujiwara, a con artist with plans to marry Hideko, steal her money, and then send her to an asylum. The catch? Hideko doesn't know any of this, at least not at first. As soon as Suki arrives at the mansion, we can tell something's off. The mansion itself is huge and elegant, but filled with an eerie atmosphere. Suki's family tearfully says goodbye to her as she leaves for her new job. The mood is tense, but no one fully knows what lies ahead. The mansion is owned by Hideko's uncle, Uncle Kazuki, a mysterious and intimidating man who plays a key role in the story. On her first night in the mansion, Suki hears Hideko scream in the middle of the night. She rushes to her room to find Hideko terrified after a nightmare. Suki comforts her, giving her food and even singing her a lullaby to calm her down. At this point, Hideko seems vulnerable and innocent, but as the story unfolds, we begin to realize that things aren't as simple as they appear. Now let's talk about Suki's background. She wasn't always a maid. In fact, she grew up as an orphan in a rough neighborhood, raised by a woman named Miss Back and her son. They were no ordinary family. They were involved in all kinds of illegal activities. Suki learned to pickpocket, sell stolen goods, and forge documents from a young age. The family even had a shady business of collecting abandoned babies and selling them to Japan. It's no surprise that when Count Fujiwara approached Suki with a job offer, she accepted. Count Fujiwara is a smooth-talking con artist with a grand plan. His goal is to seduce Lady Hideko, marry her, and steal her fortune. Once he gets the money, he plans to send her to a mental institution where she'll never be able to touch her wealth. But Fujiwara can't do it alone. He needs someone close to Hideko to help convince her to fall in love with him. That's where Suki comes in. Fujiwara hires Suki to be Hideko's maid, instructing her to gain Hideko's trust, spy on her, and encourage her to marry him. For Suki, the offer is too good to pass up. In exchange for her help, she's promised money, dresses, and jewelry, enough to escape her harsh life. But little does she know, things aren't going to go as planned. When Suki first meets Lady Hideko, she's surprised by how fragile and tired she looks. Hideko spends most of her days reading for guests in a formal setting, which leaves her physically and emotionally exhausted. One day, Hideko asks Suki to read a letter for her, but Suki can't read. Instead of admitting this, Suki flatters Hideko, telling her that Count Fujiwara thinks about her every night before he sleeps. From here, their relationship starts to develop. Suki feels conflicted. On the one hand, she's supposed to be helping Fujiwara manipulate Hideko, but on the other hand, she begins to feel sympathy for Hideko and even finds herself admiring her. The turning point comes when Suki helps Hideko take a bath. There's a moment of closeness between them as Suki gently cleans Hideko and carves candy from her teeth. This small, intimate act hints at the deepening bond between the two women. Meanwhile, Count Fujiwara makes his move. He arrives at the mansion to seduce Hideko, but Hideko, being naive and sheltered, doesn't fully understand what's happening. Fujiwara, ever the strategist, asks Suki to help interpret his feelings to Hideko, to explain how much he loves her. This puts Suki in a tough position. She's starting to care for Hideko, but she's also bound by her deal with Fujiwara. As the days pass, Suki finds herself growing more and more protective of Hideko. She starts to question her involvement in Fujiwara's scheme. Should she continue with the plan and betray Hideko for money, Or should she help Hideko escape from this web of lies? The tension between Suki's loyalty to Fujiwara and her feelings for Hideko builds as the story progresses. One night, Hideko confides in Suki, telling her that she's unsure whether she should marry Fujiwara or her uncle. This reveals another layer to the story. Hideko's uncle Kazuki has been raising her with the intention of marrying her himself. This isn't just creepy, it's part of a larger plan to keep Hideko's fortune within the family. Kazuki is obsessed with rare books and uses his wealth to feed his collection. He's also incredibly controlling, and Hideko has been under his thumb her entire life. The uncle's obsession with rare books isn't just a quirky trait, it's a symbol of his control over Hideko. He forces her to read disturbing, inappropriate material in front of guests, treating her like an object rather than a person. We soon learn that Hideko's reading practice isn't just for show. It's a form of psychological abuse that she's endured since she was a child. When Hideko was just 5 years old, her uncle began teaching her how to read out loud from disturbing, sadistic books. These books weren't just for Hideko's education. They were part of her uncle's twisted auctions, where he would sell fake versions of rare books for high prices. The psychological and emotional toll on Hideko was immense. She wasn't just being raised to be an heiress. She was being trained to be a pawn in her uncle's schemes. As the story moves forward, Hideko reveals that she knows her uncle's true intentions. She's aware that he's grooming her to marry him so he can keep her fortune. But Hideko isn't as helpless as she seems. She's been planning her escape all along. One night, Hideko and Suki's relationship takes a more intimate turn. They share a moment of vulnerability and tenderness, which changes everything. Suki realizes that she's not just there for the money anymore. She's falling for Hideko. But their budding romance is overshadowed by the looming threat of Fujiwara and Kazuki's plans. As the plot unfolds, the true nature of the con is revealed. Suki, who thought she was helping Fujiwara con Hideko, finds out that she's the one being conned. Fujiwara and Hideko were in on the plan together, and they tricked the asylum staff into thinking that Suki is actually Hideko. Suki is committed to the asylum, while Hideko walks free. This betrayal cuts deep, leaving Suki devastated and questioning everything. But the story doesn't end there. Through a series of flashbacks, we learn more about Hideko's tragic past. Her uncle, Kazuki, wasn't just controlling, he was downright cruel. He used fear and manipulation to keep Hideko in line, and when her aunt tried to escape, he tortured her in the basement. Hideko was forced to witness this, and it left a deep scar on her psyche. In a flashback, we see a young Hideko questioning her uncle about a hanging described in one of the books she was reading. She doesn't understand why the description doesn't match what she saw when her aunt died. That's when Kazuki reveals the horrifying truth. He murdered her aunt and made it look like a suicide. Hideko's life has been one of constant fear and control, but she's not willing to let her uncle win. She teams up with Suki to escape, and together they hatch a plan. They destroy the library of disturbing books that has haunted Hideko for years, reclaiming their power and their freedom. In the end, Fujiwara's greed becomes his downfall. He and Kazuki engage in a tense confrontation, but Fujiwara has a trick up his sleeve. His cigarettes are laced with a deadly poison. The poison fills the room, killing both men and leaving Hideko and Suki free to escape. The final scenes of the movie show Suki and Hideko escaping together, leaving behind the trauma of their past. They sail away on a ferry, ready to start a new life together. They've outsmarted the men who tried to control them, and now they're free at last. No more plots, no more deception, just the two of them, embracing a future where they're no longer bound by anyone else's plans. It's a moment of triumph for Suki and Hideko. After all the lies, manipulation, and heartbreak, they've managed to reclaim their lives and their autonomy. As they sail away on the ferry, we can see a sense of peace between them. It's a symbolic journey, one where they leave behind not only the mansion and the people who betrayed them, but also the pain of their past. Throughout the movie, both Suki and Hideko have been manipulated by the men around them, whether it was Hideko's cruel uncle Kazuki or the scheming con artist Fujiwara. But in the end, it's their bond with each other that saves them. Their escape is a powerful statement. In a world where they were treated as objects, where men like Kazuki and Fujiwara saw them as nothing more than tools to get what they wanted, Suki and Hideko managed to turn the tables. They've freed themselves not just physically but emotionally. No longer pawns in someone else's game. They're now in control of their destiny. The final scenes of the movie are beautiful and poetic. We see Suki and Hideko sharing a moment of intimacy on the ferry. It's a tender and quiet moment, showing how far their relationship has come. They've gone from being strangers caught in a web of lies to partners who trust and care for each other deeply. For Hideko, this journey is especially significant. She's been trapped her whole life, first by her uncle, who used her as a pawn in his twisted games, and then by Fujiwara, who tried to manipulate her into a life of misery. But now, for the first time, she's truly free. Free to love, free to live without fear, and free to make her own choices. It's a powerful moment of empowerment for her, and it shows just how much she's grown throughout the film. Suki, too, has transformed. At the beginning of the story, she was a street-smart thief, driven by the promise of wealth and luxury. But as she got to know Hideko, she realized that there were more important things than money. Her loyalty shifted from Fujiwara to Hideko, and in the end, she risked everything to help her escape. It's a testament to her character growth and how love and compassion can change even the most cynical of hearts. The movie ends on a hopeful note. The darkness and manipulation that define the first two-thirds of the film give way to light and possibility. We're left with the image of Suki and Hideko sailing off into the unknown, ready to start a new chapter in their lives. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, there's always hope for a better future. This final scene also ties back to the movie's broader themes. Throughout The Handmaiden, we've seen how power dynamics can corrupt relationships. Whether it's the uncle's control over Hideko or Fujiwara's manipulation of both women, the film explores how people can be used and controlled by those with more power. But in the end, the story isn't just about power. It's about breaking free from it. Suki and Hideko's escape symbolizes a victory over the forces that tried to oppress them. It's not just a physical escape from the mansion, but a deeper escape from the expectations and limitations placed on them by society. As women in a patriarchal world, they've been treated as commodities, but together they've managed to carve out a space where they can be free from those expectations. In many ways, The Handmaiden is a story about survival. Both Suki and Hideko come from difficult backgrounds. Suki from a life of poverty and crime, and Hideko from a life of emotional and psychological abuse. But through their bond, they find a way to survive and thrive, despite the odds stacked against them. It's also a story about love. Not the manipulative, controlling kind of love that Fujiwara or Kazuki offered, but a genuine mutual love built on trust and understanding. Suki and Hideko's relationship isn't perfect, and it's complicated by the lies and schemes that surround them. But in the end, it's their love for each other that allows them to escape and find freedom. As the credits roll, we're left with a sense of satisfaction. The bad guys, Kazuki and Fujiwara, get what's coming to them. Fujiwara's greed and arrogance lead to his death by his own poisoned cigarettes, while Kazuki, the cruel and controlling uncle, meets his end in a slow and painful way. Meanwhile, Suki and Hideko are free to live the life they choose, away from the dark forces that once controlled them. This film is not just a thriller, it's an exploration of complex characters, layered with themes of power, betrayal, love, and freedom. It challenges us to think about how people can be trapped by their circumstances and how they can break free. Suki and Hideko's story is one of resilience, showing us that no matter how dire things may seem, there's always a way out if you have the courage to take it. In the end, The Handmaiden is a celebration of agency and empowerment. Suki and Hideko are no longer defined by the men in their lives or by the roles that society has forced upon them. They've reclaimed their identities and their futures, and as they sail off into the horizon, we can't help but feel hopeful for them. And that's the story of The Handmaiden, a tale of deception, love, and liberation. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the movie's plot and themes. If you found this video interesting, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more movie explanations and reviews. Your support helps us bring you more content like this, so make sure to stay tuned for more.